and a very warm welcome to Guest for Change. My name is Michaela and I'm the Sustainability Representative for the Guest List. Today I have the incredible opportunity to interview Dr. Reiner Hengstmann. With a background in business and a PhD in chemistry, Reiner began his career as the director of an environmental analysis laboratory. He's played major roles at Puma and Hugo Boss, where he's initiated sustainable practices. To create a better world to live in has always been his goal, and so it is not a surprise that sustainability became his career foundation. He even moved with his family to Asia for 12 years to live and work within the supply chain. Reiner pioneered the world's first environmental profit and loss account at Puma, and he has been involved with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Reiner is currently working for ISA Tang Tech as VP Additional Materials. We are very excited to dive into our conversation with him today. So without further ado, welcome Reiner. So Reiner, with your background, it's actually quite extensive. Have there been any, I'm sure there must have been high points and low points in your industry or your whole entire career. Was there a specific turning point where you started to focus on sustainability?
I do have a chemical background, meaning I started chemistry at the university. And my intention was always to go to the into the chemical industry. Because, at this time, earning quite some money, interesting. When I then went to the PhD thesis, which was already focusing on environmental issues, I think this was one turning point for me first, saying, doing the research, and I was working on dioxins, of course, has not that much to do with the textile or the fashion industry as such, but one of the most toxic compounds. And again, while I did the research, I came to the conclusion, there's a lot of going on. There's some need to do something, right? So meaning then after the PhD, I went into a private lab. We did analysis of soil, water, air, the normal work. Then into waste management, and then, eventually ended up at Puma. And here as well, I would say this was it triggered here for me really it was an intrinsic push. You have to do something. I did not apply for sustainability manager because at the time when I started, the new buzzword sustainability, though it was existent, nobody used it. Right? At the time we had environmental affairs and social affairs, and they made me responsible for both. But then coming into the industry and dealing with these questions, setting up or coming up with standards, convincing suppliers, really going down the supply chain, and seeing the gaps, seeing what needs to be done and how much it is, this actually triggered that, yes, let's do something. And yeah, I will manager environmental affairs, whatever this means, right? And again, at this time, it was like a wave. Environmental issues came up. There was something found in a t-shirt or in a shoe, and became quiet. And social issues, again, some rallies from certain NGOs, right, especially in the US, against the sports industry, the fashion industry, working conditions, while being educated with a science background as well, dealing then with NGOs, dealing with the people which are making our stuff. I had no idea at the time. I learned a lot, and this, really motivated me to do more. And coming now to your question, really high points were, there was once a case with my employer. There was one supplier in Mexico. A legal issue happened there. And this issue went around the world within 24 hours. So the email inbox of my former CEO was overflowing mine as well. We were under pressure.
Sure.
And we had no idea to deal with this. This was a textile company, of course, not belonging to my former employer, but producing. So we had no idea on how to deal this. Not to deal this, how to deal with it, and maybe even most likely to solve it. So what we did at this time, and this was the so-called Matamoros case that really went around the world. I tell you, this was a very, very tough time. Definitely a learning curve for everyone, but again, we had no idea on how to solve this. And this was the first time where we then decided, okay, we cannot go ahead like this, playing ping pong with NGOs, with the civil society. We said, okay, let's invite them, get them on the table, and create so-called stakeholder event, or stakeholder engagement. I think it's even better. It's not an event. Later on, it might have turned out into events, because then it was continuously every year. But nevertheless, we invited NGOs, civil society, even politicians, sitting on a table trying to find solution. I think this was as well a starting point, because we were then years back the first company which did it globally, getting people together from different angles, and it turned out, we really had fights on the table, but as well in the breaks we were standing together, we were discussing how can we make it better, right? Not just campaigning, how can we change it? Again, this really triggered the stakeholder engagement with and for Puma, which was done in a monastery and in the mountains. Was a place where we locked ourselves away 2 days and discussing. Well, and then based on these initiatives, based on what we have then implemented, of course, further development, coming then back to the highlights, Puma we were awarded with an award from the German business from the German network. What was it? The German Network of Business Ethics, exactly. The German Network of Business Ethics. We got an award because of what we did. A little bit later, but not only because of the social issues, but as well due to the environmental activities we did, Puma was then awarded the National German Sustainability Award. So this was really a highlight, I can tell you. And at least we made it once in the so-called Dow Jones Sustainability Index as leader within the sector. So these were really, the fruits of the work, of the hard work, not only me, but really the entire team, right? Delivered. And of course, we had a CEO, an amazing CEO, who really was and still is in sustainability, doing the best to have a better world. But of course, beside all, as the medal always has two sides, very fast I recognize the reality that if you look at how the business was done, I have to say was done, just thinking of tomorrow for short-term solutions, not really caring where stuff is coming from, as long as it's affordable, right, and creates a certain margin. This then brought me back to reality.
So the moments when you got the awards and everything, was that when you kind of realized that going with sustainable practices, it actually makes a difference, rather than people just having this communication and people getting these titles to try and work something like that? Was that kind of a pivotal moment that you said, okay, what I'm doing is for the best, it's actually working?
We definitely did not pause after this, right? And not saying, okay, this is now an award and now we can basically rest because we have done what we had to do. No, I think this was a motivation for us to go further, right? Beside this, Puma started with issuing the first reports, CSR reports. It wasn't even called sustainability, but CSR reports. saying, okay, when we do something, at least we have to inform of what we are doing. They were not as big as they are today, right? Booklets, which are sometimes difficult to read, especially on the weekend. But this is, we did as well. And when we made decisions, we as well tried to involve others, the relevant stakeholders into those decisions. Yeah, I mean, there was coming to another highlight, 2010, 11. I think we were the first brand who developed and even made it ready for the market, the first Cradle to Cradle collection. Well, at this time, right, already thinking in circles, the idea was amazing. And this was born out of those stakeholder engagements. Michael Braungart and Ben McDonald, both of them were invited, and they were really able to get the board on their side. Because you can be as good as sustainability manager within a company. If you do not have support from the board of management, nothing is going to happen, right? Yeah, well, this was amazing. I mean, we came up with the first shoe, which was really compostable. But no, 10 years back, 12 years back, I don't think it was the right time. Consumers were asking, okay, a compostable shoe, might it fall off my feet when it's raining, or started compost? Fair questions, right? There's this unawareness was there, most likely is still there. It's still there. Yeah, it didn't turn out that well. But again, I suppose the society, consumers were not ready for this new what does cradle to cradle, what does thinking in circles mean today?
I love how you quoted sort of thinking in circles. Do you think the public or like customers are not necessarily starting to think in circles, but do you think they're starting to become more aware than what they were, or they're just still into the whole fast fashion process and just want to carry on with the trends?
Well, two things. Don't get me wrong, but I think this attitude, if I might call, is in direct correlation with your educational background. So, meaning if you have the right mindset, maybe. If you get taught those informations in school, all right? The thing is, well, the kids learn about 30-year war from 1618 to 48. They talk about dinosaurs, everything which happened in the past. There's not that much getting them ready for the future, right? This is for me the most critical issue. So again, if you have the mindset, if you have the education, if you have interest in the subject, yes. Look, I'm sitting here in Vietnam right now. Coming from Europe, completely different mindset. I think sustainability, or being responsible, let's put it this way, being more responsible has arrived there. And especially now with the pandemic, I sincerely hope that the new normal, which will come out of the pandemic, will be a new normal. Here, especially in Vietnam, it's different. Sustainability, and let's just focus on the topic, like fast fashion. We have, I don't know, thousands of fashion shops which really have mountains, and I'm not kidding, mountains of textiles in front. And very, 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 very affordable. For a few dollars, I'm not talking about the knockoffs, but for a few dollars, you get local fashion here, right? And if you don't want it any longer, you dispose of it. Then you do not have the proper waste management systems. This ends up, I don't know, right? But it's definitely not been incinerated. We don't know. we have thousands, millions basically of motorbikes here in the street, clogging the street. You can probably imagine when it comes to pollution. We still have those single-use cups, but the mentality is here, once the cup is finished, it's just it's being thrown away. So yes, we do have a difference between, maybe, I hope I'm allowed to say so, the global north and the global south. Yeah. I don't know how long this will take. And sustainability for the normal consumer here on the street, I don't think this is priority number one.
Because that's what I was about to say. Do you think it's a matter of priorities? Because, like, per se, perhaps poorer countries, they need to focus about getting food on their table. They need to focus about more things that are more present, they're more pressing moments than thinking about the future and possible generations. Do you think that that's probably one thing hindering it?
This is definitely an issue. If you just stick again to the fashion industry and you look, where's the majority of the products being made? Here or in the global south. There's a reason for this, right? And if you then just, for example, look at the wages those textile workers earn, right? Most, or still sticking to the minimum wage. And this is, since I'm in the sustainability business, it's minimum wage. There have been tons of discussions, but no change, no adjustment. It's still minimum wage. So you have a family, 1 or 2 kids, and what is the most important thing? To feed the family, right? And this is really to feed the family, to have a roof over your head and have means of transport to go to work, and try to work as much as possible in order to, as I was saying, support. Plus, education, plus. So sustainability is not there yet. It's not there yet. And to be honest, I don't see sustainability or any movements from the government, for example, pollute less, whatever, or be careful with water, be careful with, environmental resources. It's not the case, not yet.
No, and it doesn't seem so. With every guest that we've spoken to, that's their main thing, that the government doesn't seem to be doing enough or saying enough to the public, which is so unfortunate. And it seems that these private sectors or other industry members are trying to push this agenda a bit further, but it's not getting translated well, and big corporations are then jumping on greenwashing trends, and then it's quick and easy for someone to take in the sustainability word and not really understand it. But if you had to give a definition and kind of give a difference between sustainability and circularity, what exactly would you say?
If you ask 100 people about what is sustainability, you get 99 different answers. I don't want just to repeat those 99, but I think what's still, especially now, is for me the best fit in terms of sustainability is what was defined almost 30 years ago by the Brundtland Commission, right? To make meaningful use of the resources we have without compromising future generations to come. And this is really the case now. This is the case now. Sustainability is a concept. And the thing is, sustainability, we are still in the position, or not we, the industry is still in the position, everyone, to define sustainability as I would like to see it. Right? You don't have to have, you don't have an agenda where say tick, tick, tick. Yes, I've done this. Now I'm sustainable. We don't have this. Yes, we have the UN Sustainable Development Goals 2030, right? These 17 goals as a guideline. But even here, though those have been established for the governments, right, to implement in their countries, but even though we have them and corporations are, taking them, incorporating them into their business, it's not completely understood. There are still many, many, many questions. Again, you have a goal, but you have to have a tool on how to implement it, right? I mean, there's a saying, You can bring a horse to the water, but you can't make it drink. So saying, okay, this is SDG 1, please have a look and try to find out on how to solve it. That's the wrong way, right? This is the wrong way. Because I like to compare this with being on islands, right? You have 17 islands in a sea. And these 17 islands are unfortunately not being interconnected, meaning there are no bridges being built. On every island, you have some people shouting, hello, here, help me, but you cannot reach them, right? If they would work together and start building bridges and connecting all those 17 little islands, maybe. Coming to circularity. Circularity is, one of the grandchilds, plural, of sustainability, but much, much, much further developed. Meaning for circularity, you have roots and relations. You cannot just say, okay, I have a product and I just take it to the trash bin because I know this trash bin is then being taken care of. The circularity starts much, much, much earlier upstream and goes the entire way downstream. So again, you have to have rules and regulations. And those rules and regulations have been formed, in many cases not implemented, but formed. But yeah, not formed. I mean, one very good example is, which luckily is really taking off now, is Cradle to Cradle. Look, this is how many years back since Michael Brown and Bill McDonald wrote the book, almost 20 years back when they wrote the book Cradle to Cradle. At that time, amazing, still an amazing idea, still an amazing concept, absolutely. At that time, it really, how to say, it was mind-blowing. I read the book. I had to read it twice. It was not easy to understand. It was mind-blowing. This then as well triggered, as I was previously saying, the first Cradle to Cradle collection at Puma. But it's amazing to see now how this concept is taking off. More and more following Cradle to Cradle, and at least understanding Cradle to Cradle, that we really have cycles. And now coming back to those cycles, you cannot just start at one point and say, okay, I go to the next point and this is already circling for me, right? You have to take the entire chain into consideration.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's when we spoke to Christian, he kind of said that the world needs to go back to seen as a whole rather than all these different countries and separate countries and everyone looking after themselves, because at the end of the day, we're all going to reap the repercussions of everything that's going on, which is unfortunate, and it's most likely going to be the poor countries that's going to be the ones that are most detrimental to anything that's going to happen in the next few years to come. But going back to speak about government policies, how can we catalyze government policies making process as consumers and businesses in the industry? How are we able to utilize what we have at the moment? Are we able to?
One thing for sure is that we have to support the government. We have to support the government and we have to say, okay, this is what we want. Government, you politicians you have been elected by us in order to represent us, right? Though we all know politicians are most likely not doing what we like them to do, but the thing is, you are representing us. And when, let's look, for example, into climate change, right? The good thing is that especially now in the pandemic, it's still on the agenda, but I mean, we have it's 1 minute to 12. It is 1 minute to 12, right? Maybe this is the next pandemic, the climate impact. Governments are slowly catching up. Slowly, I have to say. But the reason is not because of their intrinsic motivation, because they think, well, we have to do something, because there's pressure, there's external pressure, there's demand. And I think that this demand creates, or is the result that governments are doing. But are they doing enough? They're not doing enough, that's for sure. I mean, in Germany, for example, we have the so-called green button in terms of textiles. Well, it's a national initiative, but at least it's an initiative, right? And which set directions. Now the new law in terms of human rights, meaning transparency in the supply chain. You see, there are things coming. You have to say better late than not at all. It is coming. But again, here in developed countries, what is in developing countries? Developing countries where I think there's even more need than in developed countries, but there is no system in place. We have still, corruption in place, unfortunately, in many countries. I don't know how to get this right here, and especially to catalyze. I don't know, catalyzing. I mean, making them frequently aware for the need to change. Though making them frequently aware for the need to change, whether it works here, I cannot answer. This is a quite difficult question.